After Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's high-stakes visit to Washington for a historic, make-or-break diplomatic summit with President Donald Trump, now serving as the 47th President of the United States, Senator Bernie Sanders lights a match and throws it straight at the White House. He thunders that Trump doesn't like Muslims unless they're billionaire autocrats who make his family richer, and the media pounces, framing it as the scandal of the year. But minutes later, Trump walks to a podium, armed with facts, documents, and a brutal on-camera answer that flips the entire storyline on its head, leaving Bernie and the press corps scrambling to recover. The political class is rattled, the studio panels are stunned, and America watches the explosion in real time. The 18th of November 2025, 7:12 a.m. The sky over Washington, D.C. felt wrong, too still, too heavy, like the air before a storm. A low fog slid across the south lawn, soft and gray, wrapping the White House in a kind of quiet that made people stop and glance upward. It was the kind of morning that felt pregnant with history. Camera crews were already set up from the front gate to the West Wing. Tripods, cables, satellite trucks, every angle covered, every lens pointed toward the same moment, the arrival of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. A visit almost nobody thought would happen this quickly, not after the chaos of the last administration, not after the diplomatic ice age that followed. Inside the Oval Office, President Donald Trump stood in front of the tall window, looking out over the lawn. He didn't talk, he didn't fidget. He just watched the horizon like a man who knew the next few hours could move markets, shift alliances, and redraw the map of the Middle East. This wasn't just another diplomatic photo op. This was a pivot point, one that could reset relationships, shake economies, and touch the fragile balance of power in the region. And somewhere else in Washington, Senator Bernie Sanders was sharpening a speech that would turn this visit into the biggest political firebomb of the year. For the moment, though, the White House was still. A Marine stepped forward, hand to his earpiece. "Sir, the Crown Prince's motorcade is 2 minutes out." Trump exhaled slowly. "Then let's make history." The world held its breath. The low rumble of engines rolled in before the vehicles appeared. A sleek convoy of armored Escalades, polished to a mirror sheen, gliding through the gates of the White House. The red carpet stretched out across the driveway like a river of expectation. Military honor guards snapped into formation. The press leaned over barricades, microphones trembling slightly as reporters tried to catch every frame, every soundbite, every nuance. And then it happened. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman stepped out of his vehicle with the calm assurance of a man who carried centuries of lineage behind him. His gaze swept the White House grounds, measured, respectful, thoughtful, almost quietly grateful. Then he saw Trump. The president stepped forward, shoulders squared, expression steady. They shook hands. Firmly. Two leaders locking eyes with the unspoken understanding that the choices they made could move continents. But behind the salutes, the cameras, the ceremonial precision, something darker was already brewing. In the press area, a cluster of young aides stared down at their phones, faces tight. Notifications wouldn't stop buzzing. Capitol Hill alerts, push notifications, cable news banners. "Bernie's heating up," one whispered. "You see this? He's calling the meeting a disgrace." Another aide held up a tweet. "Trump doesn't like Muslims unless they're billionaire autocrats who can make his family richer." Bernie Sanders. "The timing was disastrous. This is going to blow up," an aide muttered. And it would faster than anyone expected. Inside the White House East Room, the mood felt almost celebratory. A string ensemble played softly in the background. Diplomats mingled. American business leaders, half trying not to look too eager, quietly buzzed about the rumored $1 trillion Saudi investment package money that could supercharge American infrastructure, factories, energy projects, and jobs in forgotten cities. After years of economic stagnation, the idea felt like oxygen returning to the lungs. Reporters snapped photos of every handshake, every smile, every diplomatic gesture. Then the whisper arrived. A Secret Service agent stepped up to Trump's senior advisor, phone in hand, voice low. "Sir, Senator Sanders just went live." Color drained from the advisor's face. "What did he say? You should see it yourself." Across town, televisions flickered on in newsrooms, offices, and bars. Bernie Sanders stood behind a podium, fists clenched, voice rising with anger. This president, Bernie snarled, doesn't like Muslims unless they're billionaire autocrats who can make his family richer. Gasps filled control rooms. Staffers covered their mouths. Producers leaned toward their monitors like sharks smelling blood. In the East Room, the shift was immediate. A ripple of tension spread through the air like an invisible shockwave. Heads turned. Conversation slowed. Cameras swung toward Trump, hungry for his reaction. He didn't flinch. He simply straightened his tie, stepped back from the crowd, and quietly told an aide, "Prepare the briefing room. Something big was coming." No one yet understood how emotional or how explosive it would be. As Bernie's comments spread across Washington like wildfire, the energy inside the White House changed in seconds. One moment, staff smiled as they offered Saudi coffee and dates to visiting delegates. The next, whispers drifted down the marble hallways like cold air from under a door. People could feel it. Something was about to snap. Nobody knew in which direction or how hard. Trump's senior advisor practically jogged down the East Wing corridor, nearly colliding with a Secret Service officer. "Where is he?" the advisor asked, slightly out of breath. "In the diplomatic reception room," the agent replied, stepping aside. The advisor entered quietly. Trump stood alone, hands clasped behind his back, gazing at a portrait of George Washington. The warm yellow light cast long shadows across the room. He didn't look furious. He looked tired, disappointed, not just in Bernie Sanders but in what Washington politics was turning into. "Sir," the advisor said gently, "Bernie's comments are everywhere. CNN has it on a loop. MSNBC is selling the visit as corruption. Social media is on fire." Trump didn't turn. He took a slow breath. "Let them talk," he said. "Sometimes you need people to show you who they really are." Outside, staff exchanged uneasy looks. They could feel it. Something powerful, maybe historic, was building inside him. Meanwhile, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman stood near the tall French doors overlooking the rose garden. Sunlight bounced off the glass in sharp angles, throwing shifting patterns across the floor. Even that beauty couldn't cover the sudden tension in the air. He noticed the change. The smiles had faded. Security spoke in hushed tones into their sleeves. American staff checked their phones every 20 seconds. He finally walked over to Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. "Is everything all right?" he asked. Voice calm, composed. Caroline forced a professional smile, but he could read the strain behind it. "There has been a political development," she admitted. He nodded slowly. "Is it about my visit?" She hesitated. MBS tilted his head slightly. "Please, tell me the truth." She swallowed. "Senator Bernie Sanders attacked the president on live television. He claimed the only Muslims President Trump likes are billionaire autocrats who make his family richer." It's spreading everywhere. For the first time that day, MBS's expression darkened. Not with rage, but with something closer to hurt. He understood politics could be cynical and vicious, but using his visit as a weapon to smear Trump personally, that bothered him deeply. "Your president welcomed me with honor," MBS said quietly. "This is undeserved." Caroline nodded, her eyes glassy. And in that instant, MBS understood something. It wasn't just Trump being targeted. The relationship itself was under attack. Trump returned to the Oval Office and shut the door behind him. Very few people could read his face during moments like this, when the world forced him to choose whether to ignore the hit or to fight back in a way that would be remembered. He walked slowly to the resolute desk, sat down, and folded his hands. A secure line buzzed. It was Jared Kushner. "Dad," Jared said softly, "I saw Bernie's speech." Trump said nothing. "Saudi delegates are nervous. The media is pushing this as corruption. They're saying your friendship with MBS is suspicious, that this isn't diplomacy, it's personal enrichment." Still, Trump remained silent. Then Jared added the one thing that broke through. "MBS looks shaken. He feels this attack dishonors him, and you." Trump's jaw clenched for the first time that morning. Something flickered behind his eyes, not rage, but a deep, personal sense of injustice. Trump valued three things intensely: loyalty, respect, and strength. MBS had shown all three. Watching that twisted into a cheap campaign attack was a line too far. Finally, Trump exhaled. "Get everyone ready," he said. "I'm going on camera." A pause on the other end. "Now?" "Yes," Trump answered. Firm. "If Bernie wants a fight, he's going to get the truth. And the truth is going to crush him." Trump stood. History was about to speed up. By late afternoon on November 18, the West Wing felt eerily calm. Normally it hummed with constant activity, phones ringing, aides rushing, staff moving from briefing to briefing. Today, everything seemed muted. Even the sound of keyboards felt lighter. Like the building itself knew something big was coming. Caroline Levitt walked quickly toward the briefing room, clutching a folder of talking points that she secretly suspected wouldn't be used. Behind her, camera operators adjusted lenses, checked tripods, tested microphones. The press could smell drama, and they were circling. In the Oval Office, Trump sat at the resolute desk, lit by a single lamp. He didn't look enraged. He looked heavy, like someone whose motives had been twisted into something poisonous one too many times. An aide knocked softly. "Sir, the room is ready." Trump lifted his eyes. "Good." As he stood, a Secret Service agent stepped forward. "Mr. President, Bernie just doubled down." Trump paused. "On what?" The agent held out a phone. New clip. New rage. Bernie, red-faced, shouting into the cameras. "Trump sold us out to autocrats. He cares more about Saudi money than American lives." Staff nearby went silent. Trump closed his eyes for half a second and whispered, "Enough." While the West Wing braced, MBS waited quietly in a private sitting room near the East Wing. The warmth from earlier in the day, the smiles, the ceremonies, the optimism about partnership, now felt overshadowed by a storm he hadn't brought, but was suddenly at the center of. A White House staffer entered and bowed slightly. "Your Royal Highness, may I bring you anything?" MBS shook his head. "No, I only wish to know if my visit has caused your president trouble." The staffer's throat tightened. He hadn't expected that level of humility from a leader known for power and decisiveness. "You've caused no trouble, sir," the staffer said carefully. "Our politics can be cruel. They twist everything." MBS nodded slowly. Then he asked something unexpected. "Did President Trump seem upset?" The staffer hesitated, then chose honesty. "He seemed hurt. Not because of you, because someone attacked his intentions." MBS's eyes softened. "He honored me. He honored my country. I came for friendship, not controversy. I do not want him punished because he welcomed me." The words hit the staffer hard. For a moment, he didn't see a crown prince. He saw a man who understood loyalty, respect, and the weight of leadership. And it made Bernie's attack feel even smaller and meaner by comparison. At 5:41 p.m., Trump stepped out of the Oval Office. The hallway was lined with staff, press aides, and military personnel. No one spoke. No one fidgeted. Footsteps echoed like a slow drumbeat. Trump walked at an even, controlled pace. Not like a man seeking revenge, but like a man fulfilling a duty he didn't ask for, but refused to duck. His tie was straight. His shoulders were squared. The air felt so thick that some staffers felt their eyes sting. They'd seen Trump battle scandals and attacks before, but this felt different. This wasn't about policy. This was about honor. At the door to the briefing room, he paused. On the other side, reporters were whispering, arguing, rehearsing their spins. Bernie's line had already gone viral. Pundits were calling the Saudi visit shady, dirty, ripe for investigation. Trump rested his hand on the door handle. He glanced at Dan Scavino and said quietly, "They think they know me. They think they can lie about who I care about, who I respect. Tonight, they find out." Dan nodded, eyes wet. "Give it to them, sir." Trump pushed the door open. The room fell silent instantly. History was in position. As he walked toward the podium, the press thought they smelled blood. Camera lenses zoomed in. Lights flashed across his face. Reporters leaned in like wolves, circling what they thought was a wounded animal. On CNN, a political correspondent whispered into her mic, "We're moments away from President Trump responding to the most explosive accusation yet about this Saudi visit." MSNBC chimed in, Sources say Trump is rattled. This could be a defining, possibly damaging moment. Even Fox News looked tense. The president is about to speak. The stakes are high, but inside the room, it didn't feel like a circus. It felt heavier, more emotional, almost sacred. Staff who had been with Trump through countless crises recognized the look in his eyes. It wasn't fury. It wasn't defensiveness. It was resolve. Reporters shouted over each other. "Mr. President, is Bernie Sanders right? Did your family profit from Saudi investments? Is this visit just a cover for private deals?" Trump didn't answer any of them. He simply stepped up to the podium, placed both hands on the sides, and looked out over the room with a calm that slowly, almost impossibly, silenced even the loudest voices. For a brief, surreal moment, the briefing room went dead quiet. What was about to happen wasn't politics as usual. It was personal, and it would change everything. Down the hall, in a secure waiting room, MBS sat with two Saudi aides. He could hear the muffled roar from the briefing room, reporters yelling, chairs scraping, producers barking into earpieces. One aide leaned in. "Your Highness, perhaps we should leave. The situation appears sensitive." MBS shook his head. "When a friend is under fire because of me," he said, "I do not walk away." Silence followed. Heavy, respectful. Another wave of noise rolled down the corridor. This time words like corruption, money, enrichment floated through. MBS closed his eyes briefly. He knew American politics could be brutal and chaotic, but hearing Trump's name dragged through the mud over a visit meant to build partnership made his chest ache. "He welcomed me with dignity," MBS murmured. "He treated my visit as history, not scandal." One aide nodded, emotional. "Americans will understand soon. The truth will come out." MBS stared at the closed door. "No," he said quietly. "Trump will show them the truth." And though he wasn't the type to pray in public, his heart made a quiet plea. Let this not wound the man who chose to risk political fire for friendship. Back in the briefing room, every light, every lens, every microphone was fixed on Trump. He took one slow breath. Just one. And yet everyone in the room felt it. Dan Scavino watched from the side, swallowing hard. He'd seen Trump deliver big speeches before. None felt like this. This wasn't polished. This wasn't poll-tested. This wasn't campaign strategy. This was Trump defending his name, his intentions, his heart. He adjusted the microphone. Before he could speak, something quietly remarkable happened. Behind the cameras stood a young Muslim staffer, maybe 25, in a neat suit. His hands trembled slightly. Bernie's words hadn't just attacked Trump. They had hit him too. Ever since he'd joined the White House, the president had treated him respectfully, without condescension, without suspicion. "I hope he speaks for us too," the staffer whispered to a colleague. Trump scanned the room slowly, letting the silence stretch just long enough for everyone to feel the weight of what was coming. Then he began. "Folks, before I say anything else," he said, voice steady, "let me tell you the truth." The tone measured, sincere, painfully human-made. Even hardened reporters straightened up. They'd braced for a brawl. What they got was something far more dangerous to the narrative. Across town at MSNBC, Bernie Sanders sat rigid under studio lights as producers sprinted around him. He'd just finished another hit segment attacking Trump and expected applause, high fives, a fresh wave of momentum. Instead, something was off. A young intern rushed up to the senior producer. "You need to see this." "What is it?" "Trump's at the podium. The room is silent. Completely silent." Bernie frowned. "That doesn't mean anything. The press goes quiet before a meltdown." The intern shook his head. "No, sir. They're not quiet because they're waiting for a train wreck. They're quiet because it looks like he's about to say something big." The senior producer stared at the monitor, jaw tightening. "I've never seen him this calm before a statement," she muttered. Bernie's chest tightened. On screen, Trump stood at the podium, hands still, eyes locked on the cameras. Bernie got the same feeling as a man who had tossed a match into a forest without checking which way the wind was blowing. A voice crackled over the control room speaker. "Cut everything. Go live to the White House feed. Trump is speaking." For the first time that day, Bernie's throat went dry. He regretted opening his mouth. In the briefing room, time felt suspended. Trump hadn't even gotten through his opening sentences, and yet everyone could sense this wasn't going to be a typical defensive rant. Caroline Leavitt stood in the corner, clutching her prepared talking points. Her heart pounded. "He's not using these, is he?" she whispered to Dan Scavino. Dan shook his head. "No, this is straight from him." Trump drew another breath, scanning the room. For a moment, he didn't look like a president standing behind a podium. He looked like a father, a friend, a man defending his reputation in front of people who'd spent years misrepresenting him. The young Muslim staffer behind the cameras felt tears forming again. "Please," he whispered, "show them who you really are." The cameramen stood perfectly still. No coughing. No chair squeaks. Even the buzzing lights seemed to fade into the background. Trump leaned closer to the microphone. "Before any politics," he said quietly, "before any noise, I want to speak from the heart." Emotion rippled through the room. Some reporters exchanged uneasy glances. They'd seen Trump combative, fiery, relentless, but this was different. Something deeper was on its way. Trump continued, voice low but clear. "I heard what Bernie Sanders said. I heard every word. And I want the American people, especially my Muslim American brothers and sisters, to hear the truth." Cameras zoomed in. In the MSNBC studio, Bernie Sanders leaned closer to the monitor, panic starting to rise. In his private room, MBS froze, listening. Trump lifted a single sheet of paper on the podium blank and put it aside. He wasn't reading a script. "I have nothing against Muslims," Trump said. "I never have. I respect people who respect this country, who love this country, who fight for peace and safety. And the truth is, many Muslims have stood with me, worked with me, prayed with me, and served this nation with honor." A reporter's face softened. Another lowered her camera slightly. Trump went on. "When ISIS was tearing the Middle East apart, Muslims fought alongside us. Muslim Americans risked their lives for this country. I've met their families. I've cried with their mothers. I've buried their heroes." The room tensed. The air shifted. This wasn't talking points. This was raw. Trump looked straight into the camera and straight through Bernie Sanders. "For you to use their faith to score cheap political points," he said. "That says more about you than it will ever say about me." Bernie's face went pale, and the real counterpunch hadn't even landed yet. Inside the MSNBC control room, chaos erupted, but not the kind Bernie expected. Not glee, not triumph, fear. The director stared at the White House feed. Why is he talking like that? A senior analyst, usually smug and armed with a stack of anti-Trump zingers, spoke in a near whisper. "He's calm. That's very bad. For us." Bernie sat frozen, fingers digging into the armrests of his chair. The moment Trump started talking about Muslim American soldiers, about funerals and grieving families, something changed. Viewers felt it. The studio felt it. Even Bernie felt it. Cut to commercial, the director snapped. "We can't," a producer shot back. "Every other network is running this live. If we bail, we look guilty." Sweat beaded on Bernie's forehead. This wasn't Trump ranting. This was Trump connecting. He's flipping it," Bernie muttered, horrified. The analyst looked at him. "He's not just flipping it," she said softly. "He's making you the villain in your own story." For the first time that day, Bernie realized he'd started something he couldn't control. In the briefing room, the emotional shift was obvious. Reporters had arrived ready for fireworks, for insults, dodges, counterpunches. Instead, they were watching something they weren't prepared for. Vulnerability, sincerity, and a full-throated defense of Muslim Americans from a man they'd spent years accusing of bigotry. A Muslim cameraman, always professional, felt a single tear escape down his cheek. He quickly wiped it away, until he noticed the staffer beside him crying too. A reporter slowly lowered her camera. "I've covered him for years," she whispered. "I've never seen him like this." Even Secret Service agents exchanged glances that said what no one dared voice out loud. "This is bigger than politics." Caroline felt her eyes burn. She'd stood behind Trump during storms, controversies, and hit pieces. But this felt different. "He's reminding them he's human," she whispered to Dan. Dan nodded, voice tight. This is the Trump people forget exists. Trump paused. Not for theatrics, but because he actually felt the weight of what he was saying. He looked out across the press corps, seeing their expressions soften, seeing years of judgment weaken. He wasn't defending a policy. He was defending his character. And America was listening. On the other side of the hallway, MBS rose from his seat. He could hear Trump's voice more clearly now, not every word, but the tone, the sincerity, the defense, the emotion. An aide whispered, nervous. Your Highness, maybe we should wait. The President is handling it. MBS shook his head. No, I must hear him. He is speaking not only for himself but for our friendship. He moved closer to the door, close enough that Secret Service instinctively shifted their posture, acknowledging him but not stopping him. Sir, the media will see you, another aide warned. Let them, MBS replied. Let them see that I stand with him. He rested his hand on the door handle, not to fling it open, but just to feel connected to what was unfolding inside. Then he heard Trump say, and for Bernie Sanders to use a Muslim man, a partner, a friend, as a political weapon. MBS closed his eyes. His chest tightened. The president wasn't just defending policy. He was defending him. This wasn't strategy. It was loyalty. And it shook MBS more than any headline ever could. In the briefing room, Trump's voice carried a weight even his harshest critics couldn't shrug off. Something in his tone, steady, sincere, grave, began to crack the media wall that had been built around him for years. A CNN reporter known for brutal Trump questions lowered her pen. He's not dodging, she whispered. He's just talking. Her colleague nodded. I didn't expect this. Across the room, the Muslim cameraman who had already wiped away one tear felt his chest seize as Trump called Muslim Americans heroes, patriots, and friends. This didn't feel like theater. It felt personal. Reporters squirmed. Their pre-written narratives no longer matched what they were seeing live. In control booths across the country, producers scrambled. What is going on? He's humanizing himself. He's turning the accusation inside out. If this keeps up, public opinion could move. In living rooms and diners and taxicabs, people who usually tuned out political speeches leaned in closer. Trump wasn't attacking. He was revealing. And the truth felt bigger than any campaign spin. At MSNBC, Bernie Sanders sat rigid, watching his own attack boomerang. Trump's empathy, his stories about Muslim soldiers, his calm strength. It all smashed into Bernie's narrative like a wrecking ball. One analyst whispered to the director. He miscalculated. He went too hard, too personal. The director, eyes glued to the screen, muttered through clenched teeth. Trump just grabbed the moral high ground. If this keeps going, Bernie's hit could blow up in his face. Bernie's skin flushed. He's acting, Bernie said weakly. He has to be acting. But even he didn't sound convinced. His own staff avoided eye contact. Trump's gentle but firm delivery, his defense of Muslim Americans, his condemnation of using faith as a weapon, it all made Bernie look cruel, petty, and small. He's not acting, Senator, the analyst said quietly. He's showing the side people forget, the one that gets emotional about soldiers and loyalty. And America is seeing it live. On the studio monitor, Trump paused and stared straight into the camera. Bernie felt like the president was looking right at him. He knew the next line could gut his entire argument. At the podium, Trump raised a hand, not to silence the room, but to steady the moment. Every shuffle stopped. Every whisper died. He leaned into the mic. Let me make something very clear, he said. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is not an enemy. He is not a prop. Behind the door, MBS trembled. Not even his closest advisors had ever heard an American president defend him that openly. Trump's voice deepened. He is a partner, a leader, and someone who came here to help create jobs for Americans, not to enrich my family. Caroline wiped away a tear. Dan whispered, they're going to put this in history books. Trump scanned the room with a piercing look. And Bernie Sanders, he continued, you took a diplomatic moment and turned it into a cheap attack on faith, on loyalty, on partnership, on people who have done nothing wrong. A shockwave moved across the room. Trump wasn't yelling. He wasn't name-calling. He was dismantling Bernie's attack, piece by piece, with something the senator hadn't prepared for. Quiet, hard truth. And it landed. Hard. Across America, from diners in Michigan to living rooms in Florida to late-night counters in Texas, TVs and phones streamed Trump's speech. People who normally rolled their eyes at politics stopped mid-bite. Because whatever they'd been told about him before, this was different. This wasn't the Trump from edited clips or punchlines. This was a man speaking softly, clearly, painfully, honestly. In New Jersey, a Muslim father sat on the couch with his 2 teenage sons. Tears rolled down his cheeks. "Baba, are you crying?" one son asked. He nodded. "He's defending us," he said. "He didn't have to, but he is." In Arizona, a retired veteran leaned forward in his recliner. "I fought in Iraq," he told his wife. "That man visited my unit when others wouldn't. And now he's defending the guys I served with." In Minnesota, a group of Somali American taxi drivers pulled off near the airport to watch on someone's phone. They listened as Trump called Muslim Americans heroes who died for their country. Something shifted. "He didn't have to say that," one driver muttered. But he did. For the first time in years, millions of people weren't seeing Donald Trump through someone else's filter. They were seeing him for themselves. And it stunned them. Bernie Sanders felt the ground disappear beneath him. Not physically, but politically, emotionally, painfully. Every sentence Trump spoke tightened the noose around Bernie's reckless accusation. "He's turning the whole country against me," Bernie whispered. A staffer tried weakly to reassure him. "Senator, maybe it won't. It already is," the producer shouted from across the studio. "Look at social media." On screens around the control room, hashtags were trending. Number: Trump stands with Muslims. Number: Bernie went too far. Number: respect not division. Bernie's face burned. Trump wasn't ranting. He wasn't frothing. He was calmly, methodically destroying Bernie's talking point with stories, receipts, and sincerity. "Senator," an analyst said gently, "you accused him of hating Muslims. And now he's talking about Muslim soldiers who fought for this country, about families he met, about sacrifices he saw. You can't argue with that using slogans." Bernie's jaw trembled. On the giant studio monitor, Trump paused and then delivered the line that sliced straight into Bernie's political chest. "Using a man's faith as a political weapon," Trump said, "is not progressive. It is not moral. And it is not American." Bernie looked down. He knew he'd already lost. And Trump hadn't even opened the folder with the evidence yet. The worst part was still ahead. In the White House hallway, MBS could no longer stand still. Trump's words seeped under the briefing room door like light. His chest rose and fell with an emotion he rarely showed in public. An agent whispered, "Your Highness, if you walk into the briefing room now, it would be highly unusual." "So is what the president is doing," MBS replied. "So is this level of truth." He took a step closer. Another. The heavy briefing room door swung open slowly. A sliver of bright light spilled into the hall. Reporters turned as the Crown Prince appeared, not barging in, not demanding the microphone, but standing quietly at the edge of the room, hands folded respectfully. Caroline covered her mouth. Dan whispered, "He came to stand with him." My God. Trump turned slightly and saw MBS. Their eyes met. No words, no theatrics, just a silent exchange of respect watched by dozens of cameras. MBS bowed his head slightly. Trump gave a small nod back. In that simple moment, Bernie's attempt to weaponize their relationship backfired completely. Instead of looking shady, it looked like what it actually was: loyalty. Trump turned back to the podium, steadier than ever. "And now," he said, voice firmer, "since Senator Sanders wants to talk about Muslims, about money, about corruption, let's talk about facts." Every reporter straightened. Now came the part Bernie truly feared. In the MSNBC studio, Bernie's knuckles turned white on the armrests. "No, no, no," he whispered. "Not this part." Trump picked up a thick folder, stuffed with documents. Dan allowed himself a faint smile. Caroline exhaled. America leaned in. "I didn't want to bring this out tonight," Trump said. "I didn't want to embarrass anyone. But when you falsely accuse a president of taking money from foreign governments, you force the truth into the light." He opened the folder. receipts, contracts, investment summaries, government logs, audit trails. This, Trump said, holding up the first page, is the $1 trillion Saudi investment package. Every dollar accounted for, every contract overseen by independent auditors. Not 1 cent, not one goes to my family. A collective gasp. Bernie's face seemed to cave in on itself. And Trump was only getting started. He lifted the documents higher so cameras could zoom in. Pages full of signatures, timestamps, official seals, everything Bernie didn't expect him to show. Here, Trump said, tapping the top sheet, is the full breakdown of Saudi investments. Every dollar going to American companies, American infrastructure, American workers. Independent auditors from 3 different agencies signed off on this. He set the paper down. Cameras fired in rapid bursts. And here, Trump continued, holding up another document, is my family's financial disclosure. Notarized. Verified by the government. Showing 0 personal transactions with Saudi Arabia. 0. Gasps rippled across the room. Some reporters covered their mouths. Others lowered their cameras, embarrassed. Trump still wasn't shouting. His voice stayed calm, measured, lethal. And here, he said, raising a blue folder, is the part Bernie Sanders hoped you would never see. Back at MSNBC, Bernie felt his stomach drop. Trump opened the folder. This is the list of American districts that will receive the first wave of Saudi investment, including Vermont. The room froze. Trump stared straight into the camera. Bernie Sanders attacked me for working with a Muslim leader, he said, even while his own state is set to gain thousands of jobs from the very investment he tried to smear. The MSNBC studio went silent. America reeled. Trump placed the papers down and shifted from documents back to something deeper. You want the truth? He said, voice tightening. I welcomed MBS to this country because he is helping bring peace to the Middle East, helping create jobs for American workers, helping strengthen alliances. But that's not why I took Bernie's attack personally. The room leaned forward. Trump swallowed, visibly emotional. During my first term, he said quietly, I met a Muslim American soldier's mother. The room went still. She hugged me and said, my son died for this country. Don't let anyone divide us because of faith. A reporter in the front row dabbed at tears. So when Bernie Sanders says I hate Muslims, Trump continued, when he says I only like them if they're billionaires, he insults her. He insults her son. He insults every Muslim American who has served and sacrificed. In the back, the young Muslim staffer couldn't hold it anymore. He cried openly. Cameras caught it. America saw it. And he insults, Trump added softly, turning toward the doorway where MBS stood. A man who came here in peace and respect. MBS lowered his head, visibly moved. Trump drew one last breath. Tonight, he said, I stand with every Muslim American, every ally who chooses peace, and every worker who will benefit from this partnership. The room didn't explode with sound. It swelled with feeling. The whole world felt it. Trump stepped away from the podium. But the moment wasn't over. MBS did something no one in that room or any control booth saw coming. He walked into the briefing room. Slowly, respectfully. Every reporter fell silent. He approached Trump, placed a hand over his own heart, and said, Mr. President, thank you. You defended our friendship with honor. You defended my people with dignity. And you defended Muslim Americans with truth. Trump nodded gently. The two men stood side by side, an image of unity that crossed borders, faiths, and political narratives. Reporters blinked back tears. Producers in studios stared, speechless. Even some of Trump's loudest critics felt something shift inside. MBS leaned in and whispered, just loud enough for the front row to hear. Loyalty is rare in this world. You have shown it. Trump put a hand on his shoulder and replied quietly, so have you. In the MSNBC studio, Bernie Sanders lowered his head. He knew the fight was finished. He hadn't lost to spin or to shouting. He'd lost to something much harder to beat. Truth. Trump and MBS left the room together. No one yelled questions. No one heckled. They just watched, aware that they had witnessed something they'd be replaying for years. All across America, millions of viewers, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Atheists wiped tears as they realized this wasn't just a political moment. It was a human one. As the cameras faded, Trump's voice echoed one last time. God bless America, and God bless every ally who stands with us.